Hello my fellow Shield Bros, and welcome to your weekly dose of history. Today we are going to delve in to a little bit of folklore and legend along with our history. We are going to talk about King Arthur, one of the most influential, one of the most well-known, and one of the most impactful characters of history and literature, as he is legendary. And we are going to talk about his historical basis, where he comes from, how he exists, what his legend is possibly based around. So for a while now, I have been quite infatuated. I have a love for Arthurian legend, and so I've been kind of compiling and researching on King Arthur and his origins, or his possible origins, as there's a lot of speculation along in there. And so today I've got kind of a dump for you, as I'm going to give you all the information that I have found and I think is interesting. So as we know, King Arthur is a historical legendary character of Celtic Briton heritage, Briton being B-R-I-T-O-N, being the people who became the Welsh, and according to medieval histories and romances, was the leader of the Celtic Britons in battles against the invading Saxons of Britain in the late 5th and early 6th centuries. So as these Germanic Saxons invaded, it was King Arthur who fought back against them. Details of Arthur's story are mainly composed of Welsh mythology, English folklore, and literary invention, and most historians of the period do not think he was a truly historical figure. There's a lot of speculation. So there's two main sources of text that King Arthur's legends are based around, and there's a lot of discrepancies and speculation around them. King Arthur was of Wales, but there was no Wales at the time. There was no Welsh kingdoms yet. And his story is actually about battling the invading Anglo-Saxons, as I mentioned, in the late 5th century CE, on the sides of the Britannic peoples, who would become, like I said, the Welsh. However, the lake, or lakes, considered to be the home of his legendary sword Excalibur, are now in the national park of Snowdonia, in what would be known as Gwynedd, and the most northern tip of the kingdom of Powys. So I suppose you could say that Gwynedd is the home to Excalibur and Arthur's legend. Because additionally, Melgwyn Gwynedd, sorry if I butchered that name, the namesake of the kingdom, was the second cousin to King Arthur according to the medieval genealogy. It is believed he was a real Roman-trained warrior who led the quote-unquote British people against the Germanic Saxon invaders. So it was the Celtic monk Gildas who wrote of the real-life battle of Mons Batonicus, or the Battle of Badon Hills, which is quite a famous battle, around 500 AD or CE, accrediting them to the Romano-British hero. And this is a picture here of a movie depicting that battle from the British people, the Arthur perspective. So that being said, the Welsh historian named Nennius is where the name Arthur first appears. It is credited in Nennius' works, N-I-N-N-I-U-S. As for his name, King Arthur, it is written in several languages, and as follows. In Welsh, sorry if I butcher these languages first off the bat, not my specialty here. In Welsh, it was Brenin Arthur. Cornish, Arthur Grenwal. Breton, it was Rau Arzur, and in Latin, it was Arturius Castus. And as for the historical references and context for Arthur's battles, it is stated that there are several historical, quote, solid texts that base their views off of. Like I said, two real main schools of thought with these texts. One school of thought was citing the entries of the Historia Brittonum, the history of the Britons, and the other one is the Annales Cambriae, the Welsh Annals. So they both saw Arthur as a genuine historical figure, a Romano-British leader who fought against the invading Anglo-Saxons sometime between the 5th and 6th centuries, like I've already mentioned. The Historia Brittonum is a 9th century Latin historical compilation attributed in some late manuscripts to the Welsh cleric named Nennius, like I mentioned, and it contains a quite debatable mention of King Arthur, but it's the first datable mention of King Arthur, listing 12 battles that Arthur is said to have fought in. These culminate in the battles of Badon, where he is said to have single-handedly killed 960 men with Excalibur. Like I said, the Battle of Badon Hills is a real battle, and quite a famous battle, and he's attributed there. But 960 men, you can say that to yourself, 960 men with one sword, that's outrageous. And recent studies, however, question the reliability of the Historia Brittonum because of this, due to the minor fluctuation and the fluctuations of numbers and conflicting accounts of the battle. The other text that seems to support the case for Arthur's historical existence is the 10th century Annales Cambriae that I mentioned, which also links Arthur with the Battle of Badon. So there is some common ground here. They both mention Arthur at the Battle of Badon. The Annals date this battle between 516 and 518 CE, and also mention the Battle of Camlin, in which Arthur and Medrot, also translated as Mordred, are both said to be killed, dated between 537 and 539 CE. So we have another famous battle here, an actual historical battle, with these two figures of myth attributed to being there, Arthur and now Mordred. These details have been often used to bolster confidence in the Historia's account and to confirm the actuality that Arthur really did fight at the Battle of Badon Hills, which again is still conflicted because of the inconsistencies. But at least we have this common ground to go off of. But problems have been identified, however, with the using of the source to support the Historia Brittonum's account. The latest research now shows that the Annales Cambriae was based on a chronicle that had begun in the late 8th century in Wales. So it's based on a story written 300 years later. Additionally, the complex textual history of the Annales Cambriae precludes any certainty that the Arthurian annals were added to it even that early. It's believed that they were added actually much later. They were actually most likely not added until some point in the 10th century, and may never have existed in the earlier set of annals, with no mention of Arthur at all. The Badon entry is probably derived from the Historia Brittonum. There you can see him getting his sword. But nonetheless, his legend has existed and persevered on. The historical basis for King Arthur has been long debated by scholars, of course, as every legend is, and it is believed that he is real, but is debated how and when and where. The legend has long been a source of hope and pride for both the Welsh and later English peoples. Of course, it should be pointed out that with all legends and traditions, it has evolved and changed through the ages, from that Romano-British soldier all the way to the later legends, traditions, and to the leader of medieval literature, traditions, and to Romance traditions, and even post-medieval literature, all the way to the early 19th century with Tennyson and the revival, and finally modern legend as depicted on the right here. Because think for a second, how many Arthurian movies have we had in the last 20 years alone? I can think of at least 4 or 5. So that makes one every 5 years, right? And furthermore, the 12th century was very important because the French writer Chrétien de Troyes added Lancelot and the Holy Grail to the story, giving it that Christian influence and the new character. They did not exist at all. Lancelot and the Holy Grail, two very big parts of modern Arthurian legend, did not exist until being added in the 12th century, and began the genre of Arthurian romance that became a significant strand of medieval and modern literature. So it's this 12th writer that really gave it this lens that is well known in the modern perspective. In these French stories, the narrative focuses, and they often shift from King Arthur himself to other characters, such as various knights of the Round Table, such as the story of the Green Knight, the travels of Lancelot, etc. Arthurian literature thrived during the Middle Ages, but it waned in the centuries that followed until it experienced a major resurgence in the 19th century all the way to the 20th century and the 21st century now. In the 21st century, the legend continues to have prominence, not only in literature, but also in adaptations for theater, film, television, comics, video games, and other forms of media. It exists in every realm of literature now. For instance, even in the 1930s, the Order of the Fellowship of the Knights of the Round Table was formed in Great Britain to promote Christian ideals and Arthurian notions of medieval chivalry and gallantry. So there's this group of men following these texts to be the ideal man, to be chivalry, to be an ideal form of manhood. So even that is quite impressive, that these legends have evolved from being a warrior leader of the Britons to this ideal leader of men and chivalry. This man who's supposed to kind of represent the ideals of chivalry and what it means to be a good person. And that's where the ideal and the legend of the once and future king comes from. Furthermore, locations throughout Great Britain, real locations, have also significance in the legends. I'll include a map in the description of the video. So, you can see that the Round Table and Camelot are both down by Stonehenge, Merlin's Cave is in West Cornwall, and Arthur's seat, where he was said to reside, was up near Scotland, and even Clan MacArthur of Scotland claimed his lineage for a very long time. So I know it was kind of a short video and it was a little bit all over the place, but I hope you enjoyed and you learned a little bit about King Arthur, his historical basis, and who he was, where these legends came from, with our two texts mentioned all the way to modern day. So with that, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you want to support me further, check out the links in the description of the video. So for the coming up videos, I plan to do some stuff for more of the Jacobite uprising, such as Battle of Culloden, the clearing of the Highlands, etc. I also want to do some of the older events of Great Britain. I really want to dive in. A long time ago, like 4 years ago, I did a video on Canute the Great and the North Sea Empire, and now I want to follow that up with the invasion of William the Conqueror and the other goings on with that whole time period. So if you have any thoughts or suggestions on that, leave that in the comment section down below for me. I do read all of the comments. And without further ado, as always, I'm ShieldBro6 for the History Armada. I hope you enjoyed your weekly dose of history, and I'll catch y'all next time. Hail the once and future king.